Welcome to the new series that I am calling the Burn Book Club. I am going to be talking with personal finance authors and other areas of interest that you can learn how to save, invest, pay down debt, grow your income, have an amazing relationship. We're going to cover so many different topics, and I'm calling it the Burn Book Club. One, because my name is Bernadette Joy and I'm your millionaire mentor, but two, because I think these are the books that the patriarchy doesn't want you to read because they want you to keep staying broke, unhappy, unhealthy, and feeling unloved. And we are here to help you build the life of your dreams. So stay tuned for all of these episodes. And today I am covering the first book in the Burn Book Club, which is, of course, my own book, Crush Your Money Goals. And I am sharing specific highlights from one of my favorite press tour stops, which is with Jannese Torres of Yo Quiero Dinero podcast. And we just had a real raw conversation about what it's like to be specifically a wealthy woman of color who is prioritizing their goals and their dreams instead of the patriarchy. So stay tuned. And if you like this content, please subscribe and check out the videos in this playlist.
Bernadette, my love, you are one of my favorite repeat guests because honestly, we always have really insightful and unique conversations around money. We're here for a very special occasion. You're actually coming out with a brand new book, Crush Your Money Goals, dropping December 10th. I am so excited for you because, again, we need so many more of these conversations, and especially for people of color, women of color, to see ourselves represented on the cover of books. You're on the cover of your book. I'm on the cover of mine. There's something very powerful that almost serves as an invitation when you see someone that you can relate to that's talking about a topic that you want to learn about. So let's dive right in. First and foremost, for folks who are encountering you for the first time, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hello, everyone. I am Bernadette Joy. I'm the founder at Crush Your Money Goals. I am primarily a money and business coach who happens to create content. And I teach a framework that is called Crush Your Money Goals. And it spells out the 5 steps that you would take to build wealth, to pay down debt, to save and invest. And it's based off of my own personal story of my husband and I paying off $300,000 of debt and building our first $1 million of net worth. And actually, I would love to go back and listen to our last episode. I don't know that I was at the 1 million in investments yet at the time that we last spoke, but we just crossed over our first $1 million in investments, not just net worth. And so I'm really excited about conversations with women like you who we can talk more about. Yes, important around financial literacy, absolutely around paying off debt and all those things. But I also want to elevate these conversations about what we can do once we reach wealth.
I love it. And so for folks who want to tune into Bernadette's original story, we actually have done 2 episodes together. Episode 77 called How to Crush Your Money Goals, and episode 150, How to Manage Wealth Guilt. Because guess what? Even after you get rich, you still got mental health issues. FYI. So
and they're just bigger and more expensive.
Absolutely. Okay. They just morph into something else. So we're going to go ahead and link those episodes in the show notes. One of the things that I also love about the way that you teach personal finance is you're just really big on practicality. You're not here to use sensationalism and a lot of the bullshit that we see in the mainstream media to motivate people. You come with really practical advice. And I'd love to start with your acronym, CRUSH. What does CRUSH actually stand for, folks who don't know?
Yes, I love CRUSH. C is curate your accounts. R is reverse into independence. U is understand your net worth. S is spend intentionally. And H is heal your money wounds. Actually, when I first did CRUSH, it started out with mindset first. And where I've been quote unquote controversial or just like different from what other people think is like a lot of coaches start out with mindset first. And I actually start out with practical, like, here's a thing you need to do first. And then along the way, we'll work on your mindset. And so that's why H, heal your money wounds, is actually the last step and not the first step. In the beginning, I was just like, hey, I just met you. Tell me all your trauma, even though we just met. And now I realize actually in order for someone to really open up about the real trauma around their money, they have to trust the process and they have to trust that there's going to be some tangible results that they can rely on.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because when I'm thinking of like parallel journey that we might take as somebody who's trying to self-improve in some way, let's say you want to get really healthy. The first thing you're going to need is like a diet and exercise plan. And you have to start doing it to start seeing the results that then reinforce you to continue to do that stuff. You're not necessarily going to be in this gung ho, I'm going to run a triathlon energy on day one. That kind of mindset gets formed as you see that progress and as you feel yourself getting stronger and you reinforce and keep doing the stuff that's working and you stop doing the shit that's not working. So I think psychologically, it makes a lot of sense to weave that mindset into the whole journey versus thinking you're just going to tackle that shit in the beginning.
And I ended up having a lot of clients early on in my coaching career where they were just stuck in the mindset piece. Like they were so addicted to self-development that they weren't actually executing anything. You know what actually builds confidence? You know what actually builds a level of self-awareness is when you actually do the things that you said you were going to do and you stick to your word. And then you'll start seeing where you have some weaknesses that you have to work on instead of just saying, oh, I just need to be motivated today. I wrote this book, but also this entire framework is based on the idea that you're not going to be motivated every day. And actually, the vast majority of days, you're not going to feel motivated. So that's why I decided to reframe my framework over the last years to focus on not knowledge, but habits.
Love it. Okay. So you're actually including 25 money habits in the book, 5 with each one of these letters for crush. So can we go through your favorite habit for each one of these milestones, if you will, like for crush, or for C, curate your accounts? Like what's one thing that people need to get into the habit of doing?
With curating the accounts, it's interspersed across that whole chapter, but it's just this idea of curating versus just collecting. So what I notice is that a lot of people collect accounts, like they have a brokerage account, but they don't know why. They have multiple 401k sitting out in the universe, but they don't know that they're out there and they don't count it as real money. So the 5 habits that are in there are all around the idea of treat your money as an art collection rather than just as a mishmash of stuff, which is what most people's stuff looks like. So I always use the analogy of think of an art curator. And I'll ask you, like, as a curator, what kind of skills you need to be a curator?
You have to have an eye for something unique. You can't just be like out here buying shit on eBay and thinking you found the next Monet.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I probably shouldn't use art because I have zero eye for anything in art. For me, it would be sneakers, right? Like, how do you know if this is a good deal on sneakers? Like, I was so excited the other day, to digress, was I saw a pair of Air Jordan 3s for $60 and I was like, what? I'm going to buy these right now. But that's because I know that usually they're 120. So the same thing goes with curating your accounts and each of those habits talks about, here's a little bit of a step that you can do to be more of a curator and not just open a brokerage account because you saw some finance bro say that you should be investing.
I think a lot of that happened during 2020 when everybody was opening a Robinhood account and buying Peloton stocks. And we learned very quickly, why you should not necessarily take investing advice from Reddit threads. Not the move.
Hindsight is 2020, right? Like at the time, everyone's, this is a great idea.
Yeah. All right. So R is reverse into independence. What does that mean?
So I talk a lot about financial independence. That's not something that I've coined myself, but I've really taken to heart. The one goal I have for everyone is to be financially free, and that there is an actual formula to that. It's the 25 times your annual expenses. What I find so fascinating about this is that the more and more people that I've taught it, just that one habit of checking in at least once a quarter. If I were to look at my expenses, my monthly expenses today, and I were to annualize that and then do 25x that, chances are it's going to be the millions of dollars for most Americans. That one exercise helps me tell very quickly who is going to be rich and who's not, because their reaction to it is either usually one of two things. It's either, oh, this is impossible and this is horseshit and I feel so hopeless now. Or it's, oh, okay, I know the number now and I'm overwhelmed, but at least now I know. When I see those people's reactions, I can usually tell whether they're going to be a good coaching client or not. But I can also tell, even without me, that they're probably going to end up being wealthy anyway, because that exercise itself, now you can't say you don't know.
Yeah. Now you're just an ostrich sticking their head in the sand if you decide to not proceed And I think the 25x rule is great for introducing folks to the concept of FIRE, but I think you're right in the sense that it does tend to overwhelm people oftentimes. And I like to just invite folks to understand that there's a variety of versions of financial independence. And so don't close yourself off to the idea that you can't create some version of this, because it is more accessible to more people than they would realize if they get out of the scarcity mindset and they get out of accepting being underpaid and overworked, which is probably the single biggest thing that's contributing to this feeling fucking impossible.
Absolutely. And I always point people towards your content too, because you've been able to accomplish financial independence in having a lot of these different passive income streams. And I took the path of building assets and then trying to squeeze passive income out of it later on in terms of investments. I think both ways are absolutely great. And this is why I like the 25x rule. Is just, I tell people, it doesn't even really matter if you ever hit that number. The point is, what actions would you take in order to even have a chance, even have a shot? And so my favorite analogy, just because I happened to see her last Wednesday and it was so exciting, I saw Simone Biles perform like the GOAT.
Yeah.
And imagine what the Olympics would be like if everyone was just like, I'm never going to win a gold medal, so I shouldn't even bother trying.
Yeah, it'd be worthless.
It would suck. And so I tell people to think like an Olympian when it comes to your finances. Even if you never win the gold medal, which is reaching that financial independence number, even if you reach 10% of that number, wouldn't you still be better off than where you are now? And that tends to move people faster than just saying, to your point, here's a number. It's either that or nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And considering the fact that I think I read somewhere recently that over 50% of millennials have nothing saved for retirement, like doing something at this point is fucking better than nothing.
I'm not a data expert, but I feel like that number is low because every millennial I talk to doesn't have it.
You might just have a skewed audience. And that's why they're calling you. They're like, Bernadette.
That's probably why they're following me on Instagram, actually.
All right. So the U stands for understand your net worth, and you have net in parentheses. So what are we talking about here?
I put net in parentheses because this is both the exercise of now we're starting to get into how do you evaluate your self-worth and your net worth. But my favorite habit in there that I feel like you would also appreciate, I call it the new negotiation norm, where just making negotiation a habit. Just deciding that you're going to negotiate your pay every year, no matter what. And so I give some tips there of specific things that you can do to negotiate your pay, whether you are like us, like where we're negotiating contracts, maybe with other clients, or if you're a salaried or an hourly employee. I was in HR for 10 years. I still am baffled by the fact that in that 10 years, I literally had less than a handful of women ever negotiate me on pay. So recently, when it came to some of this content, I had a partner of mine say, hey, we want you to do this hours upon hours of work. But since you didn't put it into the original contract, then we just assume we're going to do it all for free. They just straight up said, we're not paying you. First of all, I was really pissed. And then after I wasn't mad anymore, I wrote back to them and I said, here's what I know is that if it weren't me doing it, you would hire someone else and you would be paying them. So I just ask that you pay me fairly. Also, you're asking me to take 3 to 4 days off of my regular revenue generating business to do this type of work. So you should pay. But also in my new book, I have a chapter about negotiating. And there is no way that I will be promoting a book about advocating for fair pay, especially for women and women of color, and then take this deal. And so my favorite thing was that almost immediately I got a response, and it was from a woman who said, personally and professionally, I applaud you doing this and we'll pay you.
It's like, why can't y'all just come out with that shit? But at the end of the day, that self-advocacy is the difference between getting what you want and settling for what they give you.
That's right. That's where I'm really encouraging everyone who's listening here is the habit that I really want every woman to cultivate is that you should negotiate your pay every year minimally, if not every quarter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you keep getting nowhere you're at, like loyalty doesn't pay a lot of the times, y'all. So this whole idea that you might have had instilled in you by your parents about you just find a comfortable, safe, stable place to work and you work there until you retire, that shit is not the move, especially nowadays. I've never seen anybody get the type of raises that you get when you job hop to different organizations by just staying in the same place and accepting those 2 to 3% cost of living raises. It's just not going to happen. So at the end of the day, worry about your damn self, because your company likely has no problem cutting you off of their roster when the numbers aren't working, or there's a reorg, or there's a merger, an acquisition. There's so many reasons why they can decide to get rid of you that you just really need to understand. If you're not advocating for yourself, you're doing yourself a huge disservice.
But I definitely want to write a book at some point, or maybe short stories of all of the stuff that people don't know happens behind the scenes in HR.
Yes, an expose.
Oh, yeah. I'm ready to spill some tea on that one because I promise you, they do not care about you. I'm saying that as a former person sitting in those rooms, making those decisions about who stays and who goes. And what I love about the negotiation habit is that it stacks with what I just told you all earlier. If you curate your accounts and you know exactly where you stand and where your money is clean, and then you know how much money you need in order to not have to ever negotiate again, then you'll realize like you have no choice but to negotiate because there's no other way to accelerate that process without advocating for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're on to S, spend intentionally. I think I know what this means, but tell us.
I actually am like such a big proponent. One of my favorite habits in this one is I actually tell people to eat out, and that will actually save you money.
That is very controversial, ma'am, because especially Latinos, okay, the Latino folks listening to this, we grew up with the fucking mantra at home that said, hay comida en casa, which means there's food at home. Okay. So no, we don't need to go out. So you're giving us permission to say, fuck the norm. We're listening to Bernadette, and she said I can go to Chili's.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Not to hate on Chili's. They have some good specials there. So I'm not going to lie. I call it the fine dining allowance. I venture to tell people that like, if you're going out to eat I have what I call the 4 C's. One is for culture. So if you're going out to eat to have a cultural experience. So for me, for example, I will not make certain Filipino dishes because one, I don't know how to. And two, if I did, it would taste terrible. Then I think that's a great reason to go out and eat, to actually experience either your own culture as comfort food or to experience someone else's culture. There's a lot of debate about whether or not you're eating out healthy. I would say if you actually spend some time to find some healthy choices in your own city, then it actually can be healthier than eating at home. But the 2 biggest reasons that I tell people where it will actually save you money on eating out is around the other C that I think is most important, particularly for parents and for you, like a parent to be, is just like conserving energy. If someone like you, for example, like you're actually a great example of this, is just like your hourly rate and what you can make in your business versus you doing dishes, it just doesn't make sense.
Nope.
And then, because I have all friends who have kids under the age of 3 right now, just you're not going to have energy to do any of that stuff. So I posted yesterday in LinkedIn, particularly my parent clients who say, hey, you're not a bad parent if your kids eat pizza every now and then. If that means that you can be focused on being a better mom or being better at your job or whatever it is. So conserving energy, if that requires you to eat out sometimes, that is okay. And then the last piece is the last C, which is my favorite, is around connection. And I honestly think, so when you say I comida at home, right? That was also back in the day when everyone that was in your family lived in close proximity. But for a lot of millennials like you and I, like you don't live close to your family right now. I think they live in New Jersey, right? And my family lives like all over the place. Spending some extra money to go eat out, to see people once a week that I don't normally see, or to have a special meal to treat my mom out to something, that to me is actually saving you money in the long run, because I don't have any data to back this up yet. That'll be my 3rd book, which is the more connected that you feel and the more that you actually feel like you're loved, then I think you're going to spend less money on bullshit.
That makes sense, because a lot of us are emotionally spending to fill some kind of void.
Having a specific line item in your budget to purposefully eat out with the people that you like, with the food that actually nourishes you, and conserving energy from doing chores that you don't want to do, I think is actually a really great way to spend your money.
Yeah, I really love the kind of mindset behind that whole idea, because I think oftentimes we spend money in ways that we're told to, or that we think is acceptable according to society standards. Like for me, when I travel, I'm not a big, like, I need to go to every 5-star restaurant in the vicinity, but I damn sure need a nice, luxurious hotel room Something as simple as my mom and I went to the Zumba convention. I was already
I saw
pregnant.
that. I was so jealous.
And one of the things that I was like, you know what? I'm going to spend money on Ubers to drive me 5 minutes down the road to the convention center because it's Orlando. It's 100 degrees. I'm pregnant. My back hurts. And I don't have the fucking wherewithal to go and walk 20 minutes out in the sun when I could spend a couple dollars and make the whole experience much more enjoyable. Some people might see that shit as hella frivolous, but for me, it improves my quality of life in that moment. And so just being very clear on what is worth spending money on for your experience versus what other people are telling you you should or should not spend money on is the whole mindset around that intentionality.
That's why I chose specifically the word spend intentionally, because what I found now with coaching so many women in particular is that the guilt happens after they didn't set the intention first.
That's great. Okay. And now we are at the last letter H, heal your money wounds. So essentially you're telling us we need to get fucking therapy.
Yes, I am not a therapist. Everyone should get a therapist. That should be your biggest investment. I got my first book review from Publishers Weekly, and they pointed out this one in particular that they thought was interesting because it's not what you would expect to find in a money book. And it was what I call the Screenless Sunday, which is to digitally detox for your mental health. And so essentially the version of it that I do is I literally put my phone in my glove compartment in my car and I don't look at it for all of Sunday.
That's amazing. I wish I had that discipline.
It's great. So this past Sunday, because I did not have my phone, I rode my bicycle all around town. I went to yoga. I meal prepped for the whole week. Turns out you have a lot of time when you don't have your phone right there. I call this habit out in particular because my publisher actually pushed back on me on it. She said, what does this have to do with money? Why are you writing about putting down your phone? This is a money book. You should be talking about money things. And I was just like, do you not know that in 2024 that everyone is spending more money because of Instagram ads and, keeping up with the Joneses? And so I put in some specific statistics in there. But the point of it is a lot of people's money wounds also tend to get opened up when they look at what other people are doing all the time instead of just focusing on actually living your life right now.
Yeah, that comparison trap will have you thinking that you're failing at life. Your career's not where it should be. Your personal life's not where it should be. Your money situation's not where it should be. That shit is hella toxic. And I know even as an entrepreneur, we can fall into that trap as well of just seeing, oh my gosh, she's doing all these things. Why isn't this happening for me? That shit does not serve you.
The statistics are showing that people are just depressed. It's causing straight up depression. This is what I love about the way that we structured it is that I ask people I don't even ask you to do all 25 habits. I don't even ask you to do 10 of them. I ask everyone to pick one habit from each section and see how you might be able to stack it. So this Screenless Sunday stacks really well with this fine dining thing where to say, okay, on Sunday, instead of going on my phone, let me actually just call my friend. And let's go out and do something together. And let's both promise not to bring our phone or leave our phones in the car. And what on social media obviously isn't true. And I think people understand that intellectually, but it's when I look at people's budgets, and this is why it's related to money, they're not really understanding it. Because then they're spending money on this stuff. And I'm like, why do you need to do a lot of this stuff? And it's because it's being triggered by what they're seeing on social media. So that's why it became a money habit, is to actually have a good digital detoxing routine once a week, just like you would do self-care. Oh, let me do my skincare routine once a week. Do anything else but be on a phone. And you'll actually probably feel a lot better about your finances too.
Yeah, I love that. And I think a lot of folks use these devices and this screen time to disassociate with things that maybe you just don't want to address in your life, whether that's you hate your fucking job. And so you're going to spend all of Sunday scrolling because you've got the Sunday scaries because you're like, oh my God, we got to go do this again for the next week. It's that detachment from the distraction actually gives you the space to start really coming to terms with what's working, what's not. It gives you some clarity to really know what's going on up here.
I so am honored when you say, oh, you're one of those girls that just get it. But I think we can say that because we've spoken enough times and I've seen you in real life versus what I think is happening a lot of times is people are taking financial advice, relationship advice, emotional advice from people that they've never met before and saying, and they don't have the full picture. So part of where I think it's really important for people to have really good money habits is to rebuild this like small circle of people that actually know you as a person. For everyone who's listening to this, is find someone like a Jannese in your real life as well, or take the opportunities to actually go meet some of these people in real life. Like I'm going to FinCon next week and I go there purposefully for the fact of just seeing some people and like actually hugging them in real life.
It's just a big reunion. I love it. You know what else is going to do really good things? This book when it gets into people's hands. Okay. So tell us where we can get a copy of Crush Your Money Goals and what folks can expect.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me. You can go to crushyourmoneygoals.com and it'll be available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I would love if you would leave us a review on any of those channels. And this week I'm getting ready to record the audiobook. So if you want to hear my voice for several hours straight, you can do that too with the book.
It's a good thing that you have podcasting experience. I can't imagine anybody else reading the book to us. Folks, get a copy of both because it really is a different experience when you are holding the book and you can put notes in it versus when you're actually hearing it told by the narrator/author. Thank you so much for A, for writing this book, for B, being unapologetic as fuck about money, and C, just being the incredible person that you are. I love every conversation that we have, and I know that folks will absolutely be inspired by this one.
Thank you so much. I am so grateful for you, and thanks everyone for listening today.
Well, if you are ready to level up and actually start taking real action towards crushing your money goals, check out my new book. It is Crush Your Money Goals, 25 habits that you can start today to pay off debt, to save and invest. It's all of my best secrets as a debt-free millionaire, jam-packed into one book for just $18. So you can find more at crushyourmoneygoals.com or head to Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, wherever books are sold, or better yet, check out your local bookstore.